And welcome back to Law Call. Before we get back into our segment here, Ted, we're going to talk about some insurance and the changes in Florida law. Mr. Bynum, I believe you called in during the break, and you're from Dothan. We want to let you know that I know you didn't want to go on the air. We'll handle your question tomorrow morning and get some more information from you. A lot of times, Ted, when we have medical malpractice issues or medical issues that are called in.
And so we'll
Mr. Bynum, just want to let you know we did get your, the producers gave us your information, and we'll give you a call in the morning. Now, Ted, we left the break moments ago talking about three large areas of the law and how basically complex they can be if you're not real careful with what you're getting into. But let's just kind of focus on car accidents, because there's a lot of legislation that just changed in the state of Florida. We talked about that last week on the show, statute of limitations, how you calculate futures and past medical expenses. And basically, if you were partially involved in the accident, you could be found to receive nothing in the accident. But before we go there, it did not change uninsured motorists.
Did not.
And it didn't change PIP. And those are two large glaring issues in the state that everybody who is insured under a Florida policy needs to understand.
Right.
A lot of times people get involved in accidents and their insurance pays first. We're a no-fault state. They have a hard time with that because they did not cause the accident. And then you talked about it real briefly a while ago about uninsured motorists. So let's talk about PIP and what a no-fault statute really means.
I mean, we do have a no-fault system in the state of Florida, but that does not mean that we do not have liability claims. What it does require is that we all have $10,000 of insurance that is the first layer of protection anytime you're in an accident. So when you go, for example, if you've been in an accident and you go to the emergency room, even if you have health insurance, whether it be private health insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, if it's an auto accident, they're going to ask you what was your automobile insurance. And some people think that that's crazy that they're asking them that. And the reason is, under the Florida statutory system, is that that's your primary health insurance when you've been in an accident. So the first thing that gets billed is that PIP no-fault benefits. And until that exhausts, it is your primary layer of insurance. Right. So everywhere you will go until you exceed the $10,000 in coverage will be paid for by that PIP no-fault benefits. And if it does not get exhausted through the medical expenses, you can also use it to supplement your wage loss up to 60%. But a lot of times, unfortunately, if you have a bad accident and have to go to the hospital, especially here in Bay County with the way our hospitals charge, you will lose most of your PIP in that first round of treatment.
Because there's only $10,000.
There's only $10,000. That has not moved in
here's
years.
Something very important. It hasn't moved since, I believe, the early 70s, I believe it is.
And expenses have changed a little bit since the 70s, if you don't know that.
Just a little bit. And so if you do not report that injury within 14 days, and I say report it, you have to actually go and be diagnosed with an emergency medical condition, an EMC. You can lose 75% of those benefits, and those benefits are cut from $10,000 down to $2,500.
Yes, it's extremely important to go within the first 2 weeks.
Now that's basically a broad overview of our PIP. But the more important thing is, because we have PIP, we don't have what's called mandatory bodily injury coverage, which means someone can actually be legally insured in the state of Florida and not have any insurance to pay you for the damages they cause. Now, that's why it's very important to carry what's called uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage. And Ted, that's probably the most important policy or provision coverage area on your policy, but it does not mean that you have full coverage.
No, I mean,
or full coverage doesn't mean you have that.
It does not mean it. And technical definition of full coverage in Florida means, and I hate that terminology, and people use it all the time because in theory,
that's what they're told.
Unlimited insurance, but full coverage, the definition is legal coverage under Florida, which only requires you to have the PIP no-fault benefits and $10,000 of property damage liability. So if you damage someone's other vehicle, you're required to carry insurance to protect that, but the law in Florida does not require you to take any protections to protect them from their actual injuries. And in fact, Governor DeSantis had a bill the last year, not this past year, but the year before, that would have put us in line with most of the rest of the country and required mandatory bodily injury coverage of a minimum of $25,000 per person, $50,000 per accident throughout the state of Florida, which I think would have been a very, very good step forward for protecting everyone.
But we're not there yet.
I think there's a chance that still may come back.
We're pushing that through, and but that's why you have to carry uninsured motorists, though.
Yes, and uninsured motorists, for that reason, is extremely important, especially in the state of Florida, where people are not required to carry liability insurance. So you need to purchase something to protect you if someone hits you that has little or no insurance. It is so important that in order to not have it, you have to actually sign a form saying, I've been made aware that it's offered and I am not going to take it. And if you don't take it, what you're doing is running the risk that you will be in an accident with one of these people. And the whole reason we buy insurance in the first place is to protect us from things that are risky, the things that we cannot afford to lose. I often say I would never insure this pen. If I lose this pen, I'll go buy another pen.
No, you'll go to the supply cabinet and grab
another one.
Yeah.
But if my house burns down, I would like to have insurance to cover me for that. Well, in the same sense, the riskiest thing most of us do in any given day is drive to and from work, around running errands, getting our kids, whatever it may be, because we can't control that environment. We can't. You can drive as safely as you want. You can be the most cautious person, but someone can hit you and cause us.
But not only
severe
can
injury.
we not control that, we can't control somebody else's responsibility to carry proper insurance or carry enough insurance. And so, you know, you mentioned it earlier, Ted. The $10,000 cap on PIP is basically that represents pennies on a dollar of what claims or medical bills actually get charged and claims are worth. But we haven't adjusted that, but we're working on with the state legislature to try to get some changes passed through. But until that happens, that's why uninsured motorists is so important to have on your policy, and to make sure that if you don't know that you have it, you can always call our law firm. We get calls all throughout the week, and we're glad to put you through to an attorney that can review the policy for you. And we do that for free because we want to make sure that you're properly covered. And if you don't feel comfortable calling our office, call your insurance agent that sold you the policy, and they're more than competent enough to sit down with you and explain to you the coverages that you do need. But if you do have an agent out there that tells you that you do not need uninsured motorist coverage or underinsured motorist coverage, you probably need to change agents and call our law firm, and we'll tell you what coverages that you actually need to have. Because when you look at the cost of that provision on your policy is extremely cheap considering what you pay for your liability insurance and your property damage insurance. And to have that extra little bit of coverage goes a long way, because not only does it cover you, if you have a spouse or children, it covers them as well, even if they're not in their vehicle.
And it can even go more broadly than that. I've had situations where nieces, nephews, I mean, as long the typical language of a UM policy is if it's a resident relative. So by blood or marriage, if you are a resident relative, and that means you live in the household with the policyholder, then there's a potential avenue for recovery on that. So we always have to look at that. We have to ask, what family members do you live with? Does your spouse have a different policy than you? And we have to look at that. And it's a very important, it's been key in several situations to getting people properly compensated.
Now, the other caveat of that is if they cannot provide that rejection form that they say that that you signed, but they can't provide that to us, and even though you did not pay for the premiums, you are still entitled to that insurance. So that's why it's extremely important to retain a law firm that knows and specializes in this day in and day out to handle that.
And not only do you have that coverage, you have it stacked so if you have however many vehicles you have it that many times multiplied times the amount of liability coverage you carry on your policy.
So I'm selling insurance here, I feel like, Ted, but make sure that you actually get stacked, not unstacked, because once you get the coverage, they will ask you, do you want stacked or unstacked, and you always get stacked coverage.